Hello there, gang, and welcome to another episode of Displaying-Model-Behaviour, the Earth's mightiest video podcast. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a brand new episode of As Told by Toys. Man, I have not done one of these for the longest time, but it's a lot of fun. So what we do is I tell you all about a classic Marvel story, and most importantly, I tell you how you can recreate that in glorious, three-dimensional, physical, tangible action figure form. And boy howdy, we got a doozy today. It's a modern tale, it's Devil's Reign, and we're going to talk about it right now. So what's the gist of this story? Well, I'll tell you. It features the Kingpin, one of my favorite villains. He is the mayor of New York City, and he's got a little bit of an axe to grind. Have you ever had one of those moments where you're trying to recall a piece of information and it's driving you crazy because you know that you know it, it's on the tip of your tongue, but you just can't put your finger on it? That's what the Kingpin is dealing with, because he knows that he used to know Daredevil's secret identity, but because of some kind of magical machinations of some description, he can't access that information, and it's driving him nuts. And the last thing you want is a pissed off Kingpin, because he ain't happy. And just to stick the knife in a little bit, Daredevil himself, his arch nemesis, swings on down and he's like, yo, I hear things aren't going great for you. And he just twists the knife, and this infuriates Wilson Fisk so much that he decides, you know what? I'm the mayor of New York City. Why am I even putting up with this? As of now, superheroes are outlawed. Which is interesting, because I always assumed that superheroes were outlawed. That was a problem I had with Civil War way back in the day. I was like, hang on a second. Isn't it illegal to put on a costume and beat up criminals anyway? Why is there a law against this? There are already laws against taking the justice into your own hands. Apparently not in the Marvel Universe. In the 616, it's accepted that if you got superpowers, you got the right and the responsibility to put on a costume and fight the good fight. But not anymore. Wilson Fisk is like, nope, that's it. Y'all can't play no more. And he is going to use the Thunderbolts to enforce this new law and regime. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening here already. First of all, we got the Kingpin, and we have two beautiful Marvel legends. First of all, you've got the Build-A-Figure that came out several years ago. And I remember when this Build-A-Figure came out, I was like, holy potatoes, this is a gorgeous looking Kingpin. Absolutely stunning. My only kind of caveat with that was I wanted classic Kingpin. I wanted the purple trousers. I wanted the cravat. I wanted more popping colors. And of course, Hasbro being Hasbro, they were like, what's that? You want to spend more money? We can do that. And God bless them, they did. They gave us the retro Kingpin in all his glorious, brightly colored, fantastic fashion. This is just the perfect. It's perfect. It's the absolutely perfect Kingpin. Maybe one day we might get a Mezco, I doubt it. Or, a Mafex or something else. Unlikely, actually. This is probably the only Kingpin you're going to get. So thank you, Hasbro, for making a good job of him, because he is. This Kingpin is terrific, and for a Devil's Reign display, boom! Park him right in the middle, looks the mutts nuts. But then, of course, you got to have the number one antagonist to go with him, and that would be the man without fear himself, Daredevil. But not the only Daredevil that's going to feature in this story. But of course, Matt Murdock is your primary right here. And we got a couple to choose from. Of course, he features in this story in his classic red Daredevil outfit, which we have just got in a 3-pack box set, which is lovely. The box set itself, it has some highs and lows and creamy middles. There's a few little complaints I had for that one, particularly that Bullseye comes with a gun holster and no gun. Still baffles me. But we're not talking about him, we're talking about Daredevil. And this Daredevil, actually, in the box set, he's good. He's really good, but he's not great. I would have liked a lot more detail on the costume. You can see I love, in this comic book story, Daredevil's drawn with just some more seams. Some more seams and lines. It feels like a real actual costume he's wearing rather than a painted on bodysuit. This action figure, it's very painted on bodysuit is what it looks like. But nonetheless, it's a nice classic Daredevil that we've been waiting a long, long time for. Going back to the story at hand, it actually opens with this introduction to these two characters. Well, it's an introduction to me. Maybe they've been around for a long time and my finger just ain't on the pulse. But they're called the Stormwinds, and they're just this couple. I guess they're a couple? Not brother and sister, I don't think. But they're this couple who clearly exert huge financial influence over the world, and they want to be like the chess masters and the manipulators in the background, and they're the ones who are kind of financing and organizing the Kingpin's rise to power. And Kingpin is like a mad dog on a leash, but a very cerebral one too. And if you think you're going to be able to control and manipulate him, well, folks, I don't think you're going to be surprised with what happens at the end of this story. But going back to the story at hand, let's talk about the Thunderbolts. I love the Thunderbolts being used as essentially Marvel's version of the Suicide Squad. It's a whole bunch of villains that are being used by the government to do the Black Ops wet work type stuff that real heroes don't want to get their hands dirty with. And a fun little caveat with these Thunderbolts is that they're being led by someone who is kind of a proper hero in and of himself. US Agent. And so this Thunderbolts lineup, we got US Agent leading the team, and I like the way that he introduced himself, because basically the Thunderbolts were set up and the rest of the team is bad to the bone. You got Rhino, you got the female Electro, you got Taskmaster, Shocker appears there as a Thunderbolt as well, and completely randomly, and also what I love, we've got Agony from the Life Foundation. Such a random addition, but makes perfect sense. She's gonna be a character that's locked up in the vault somewhere, so why not bring her out and use her as a Thunderbolt? So you've got this team of downright evil villains who are relishing in having a badge and being able to legally beat the holy bejesus out of the heroes. So just taking a quick look at the figures that can build up the Thunderbolts. First of all, the Rhino, mwah, just like the Kingpin. We got the Builder figure, and then we got an actual retro release as well. Both of them, fandabidosi. And I love the retro one. He was one of my favorite figures of the year, last year or 2 years ago, even though it's just the old retro figure with a repaint and a couple of nice heads, but there's such nice heads. And I just thought, like, it's just gorgeous. Baeki's gorgeous. And he's got these big gripping hands that are kind of oversized, but they're oversized on purpose so that he can actually grip other legends and lift them up and be like, "Dah!" Love it. That Rhino's so cool. Then, the more I think about it, we've got so many great figures in this display for the Thunderbolts. Agony from the Life Foundation. Actually, she's not that great, but she's okay. Came in the Life Foundation 3-pack, and she kind of just makes up the numbers for the Life Foundation. Her design in this story, way cooler. Way cooler than her basic Life Foundation, which is just like a purple lady with big hair, basically. In this, she's a lot thicker and more monstrous looking, and she's got this horrible, like, acid corrosive spit and stuff. Very gnarly. I love what they did with her. Then the female Electro, we ain't got it yet. We're still waiting for a female Electro. I don't know if too many people are banging down the doors of Hasbro, desperate to get their hands on a female Electro, but she is there, and she is kind of a fun character. She's a real remorseless kind of crazy person, whereas Max Dillon Electro, he was just kind of a career criminal. Whereas female Electro, she's full on cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and pretty nasty. Then everyone's favorite mercenary, we got Taskmaster. I would like to see an updated 616 Taskmaster. The original one's pretty cool, but you know, kind of shows his age a little bit on the old Bucky cap. Still, he was one of my grails for a while, so I was very pleased to finally be able to get my hands on him. So also, US Agent leads up the team of the Thunderbolts, and this was a fun one in the comics because basically Wilson Fisk sets up the Thunderbolts and they kind of run amok a little bit. And then it's at the end of the first issue of the Thunderbolts spin-off series. It's called Villains for Hire. There are so many spin-off series in this story. And at the end of the first issue of Villains for Hire, US Agent turns up and he's like, "Put me in, coach." And that makes perfect sense for the character of US Agent, because he's always been a by-the-books, law-abiding, yes sir kind of person, to the point of it being a bit extreme. So it would make sense that even though Wilson Fisk is a bad guy, he's the boss, he's in charge, it makes sense that US Agent would want to follow him. And he has this great line where he's like, "I don't draw the line, I don't set the line, I am the line." It wasn't exactly that, but it was something like that. And basically he's saying, I'm going to keep the Thunderbolts in charge. And he does. I love US Agent. He's wicked. And we have our US Agent figure as well, which is a more classic design, which is a little more basic. It's not that exciting of an action figure, but you can put him as the leader of the team. I didn't even mention Shocker as well. And interestingly, we have the most up-to-date version of the Shocker in action figure form, who is sort of his classic retro one, which is a gorgeous action figure. It's kind of bonkers that Hasbro put so much work and sculpting and effort into kind of a B-level Spider-Man character. I mean, God bless him for it. I love it because this Shocker, he's got all the line work carved into him, and then the brown leather on the costume actually has like a texture, a leathery kind of feel to it. They just... chef's kiss for that Shocker. However, if you want to be a little more accurate maybe, you might want to go for the original version of the Shocker, who came out years and years and years ago, because he actually has, if you get the variant, a Thunderbolt logo on his costume. So that would actually work really well. You've got a Thunderbolt Shocker right there. Nonetheless, the Thunderbolts are Norman Osborn, what am I saying? The Thunderbolts are... I'm not editing that. The Thunderbolts are Wilson Fisk's attack dogs, and they relish in the job. First of all, taking down Miles Morales' Spider-Man, and this is where we get one of our newest Marvel Legends. We get the giant puffy hoodie Miles Morales, which honestly, I don't know if anyone was too desperate to get their hands on. This was a, what I say, an ill-conceived concept for a costume. It just felt like wanting to change up Miles Morales and like make him a bit more streetwise and urban, and I'm like, this just looks silly. Basically, the legend itself doesn't look like, you know, offensively bad or anything, but it's just like, come on, this is just a silly costume. It doesn't look good when the original Miles Morales black and red costume it's a great look. So it feels like changing something for the sake of changing something, and I think they've already changed back. So this costume did not last long. But if you want to immortalize this little blip in time when Miles Morales looked like this with a weird puffy jumper hoodie and his sort of up here kind of collar, you can get it. But I can't help but feel this guy might be warming the pegs for a long, long time. But also, speaking of spider people who might be warming the pegs for a long time, it pains me to say it, but we got my boy, Ben Reilly, and he does not fare well in this story. This is set during a time when Ben Reilly has taken over as Spider-Man from Peter Parker. I could do a whole As Told by Toys on this story alone, but it would make my blood boil too much, as Ben Reilly is portrayed as being the most gullible idiot ever to wear a Spider-Man costume. And it's like, oh, this is character assassination at its finest here. So Ben Reilly has taken over as Spider-Man in the absence of Peter Parker, who's recovering in hospital from a convenient accident that took him out of commission. And now Ben Reilly is being sponsored by this huge global mega corporation to be Spider-Man. And as we all know, huge global mega corporations only have altruistic intentions at heart. And Ben Reilly's like, you know what? These guys seem trustworthy. Hey, I can't be Spider-Man. That Peter Parker's already What's that? Peter Parker's been horribly injured? Well, I guess I'd better be Spider-Man. You guys didn't have anything to do... No, of course you didn't. What am I thinking? Alright, what's the plan? Ben, you sweet summer child. Anyway, he gets beaten up and taken into custody by the Thunderbolts as well. They are working overtime. Luckily, someone else is working overtime too. And that man is Captain America. And Captain America works to free some of the captured heroes, and he just goes around being the awesome Sentinel of Liberty that Captain America is. You gots to love him. You gotta give the people what they want, and that's what Marvel do with Steve Rogers, just being the quintessential hero. And we have some quintessential action figures of the man himself. Mainly the 20th anniversary one, which is just chef's kiss gorgeous. Absolutely fantastic. So bright, bold, colorful. Aha! Love, love, love this Captain America. Is he the definitive one? Well, it's difficult to say that he's a definitive Captain America when he has freaking holes in his shield. How do you do that? How do you make a definitive Captain America and then not actually give him just one perfect shield? They're like, no, but if we put holes in it, you can put all these different effects on it. Like, yeah, that's nice, but What if you don't want effects on it? What if you just want a normal shield? Well, then, yeah, you're out of luck. However, there are lots of other Captain Americas you can get. My first one was the Alex Ross Captain America from the 80th anniversary line. Oh, Bayek, he looked gorgeous. And now my kind of go-to Captain America is my Mezco Captain America, who totally... Your mileage is going to vary depending on what you like and don't like in action figures. He's got some seriously high-waisted pants, that's for sure. That's one thing I'll say about the Mezco Cap. But also, he has so many beautiful little details on him. I dig him. I dig him the most, baby. And now, our story's going to move on a little bit because we start to see how is Mayor Fisk, the kingpin of crime, able to exert so much influence over the people of New York and those people around him as well. And it turns out he has a little ace up his sleeve, and that ace comes in the form of the Purple Man. Purple Man, who's a character who really came back to prominence about, gosh, it pains me to say, just almost 20 years ago, or about exactly 20 years ago, when Brian Michael Bendis started incorporating him more into his Alias Jessica Jones stories, and really fleshed out how terrifying the concept of the Purple Man is, in that he can just make anyone do anything he tells them to, and he relishes in being sadistic. Unfortunately for him though, and I love this, it's just convenient writing, but I dig it. The Purple Man's powers do not work on the Kingpin. Why don't they work on him? Because he's just too freaking strong-willed. And I like that. He's just too stubborn for those powers to work. Does that mean that the Kingpin has a stronger mind than, like, Captain America or someone? Well, you know, arguably. But, like, just for the sake of this story, I don't mind it because it's just a badass Kingpin moment. There actually is a Purple Man action figure as well, but he is as rare as rocking horse poop. It's very hard to find this guy. I think, was he a Marvel Unlimited special edition or something? He wasn't a regular release. I know that much. I'm trying to think how you got hold of him. It might have been with the Marvel Unlimited subscription, which is only available in the US. That's kind of annoying. Nonetheless, though, you can find him out there somewhere, but Lord knows I ain't never seen him. But yeah, I mean, it's just a very basic figure anyway, so honestly, if you're a completionist, you'll want him. But if you want, like, a badass action figure, there's more that you could go for. However, at the end of this first issue, it looks like the Purple Man's days might be numbered, because after realizing that his powers don't work on Wilson Fisk, we end with a lot of purple blood being splattered all over the Kingpin. What's coming next? Well, we're going to find out right now. So, continuing his war against vigilantes, Kingpin has one very powerful ally, a favorite villain of mine, Dr. Otto Octavius. Doc Ock is working with the Kingpin, and he has a little assignment of his own. He has to go and take out the Fantastic Four, which is an assignment he relishes in, and they actually have a lot of history. Doc Ock and Reed Richards. I love the fact that Dr. Octopus is always going to have a beef against anyone whose intellect might rival his own. Plus, there was a classic story back in the day where Reed Richards tried to get Doc Ock to help save the life of his unborn child, and it didn't go well. It's a very tragic story, but it means that, like, there's some great backstory between these two characters. So Doc Ock, with all of his Thunderbolt henchmen, goes and, I wouldn't say infiltrates the Baxter building because they got the law on their side. So they go and essentially arrest Reed Richards and Sue Storm. And it's very impressive because those are two heavy hitters. But Doc Ock and his minions, they managed to take those two into custody with the good old power dampening collars. You gotta love those, just to veto any superhuman power. And I'm fine with that. You need it for the story. It's all well and good. However, they are called the Fantastic Four for a reason. And Ben and Johnny, they managed to get away, and more on them later. But just having Doc Ock work with the Kingpin is kind of fun, because also, you know, that Doc Ock, he ain't going to be subservient to anyone for a long time. And we have a spin-off series called, what was it called? Superior something or other. Superior Octopuses? Octopi? Something along those lines. Basically, Doc Ock uses multiversal technology to bring in four, to bring in three other Doc Ock variants, each of which have done the whole body swap thing that he did with Spider-Man in the 616. But now we have a Wolverine version of Doc Ock, we got a Hulk version of Doc Ock, and we got a Ghost Rider version of Doc Ock. It's a weird, bonkers, ridiculous story. I don't think we're going to get any action figures from this one, but we do have the classic Doc Ock action figure. We got a few Doc Ock action figures now. For a while, the one that came out back in like 2017 or so was really hard to get hold of. And he was going for, a decent amount of money. And then they announced the Doc Ock Silk 2-pack, which made no sense as a 2-pack, but there we go. And now also we're getting the animated series Doc Ock, again in a 2-pack, with Aunt May this time, but he has bendy wire tentacles, he's got the cool kind of armored costume type look. He does look pretty wicked. So it's a good time to be a Doc Ock fan. And in this story, I think they've just brought Doc Ock back into his classic kind of appearance after being the superior Spider-Man for a while, which was a terrible story how they did the transition, but it's done now. So at least we have classic Doc Ock. That's something I'm not going to be mad about. So going more into the plot, we get introduced to Luke Cage, and funnily enough, he's not cool with this whole vigilantism, outlaw kind of thing going on. So when he sees the Shocker arresting, who was it? Nighthawk. We see the Shocker brutalizing Nighthawk, and Luke Cage is like, not today. Beats the bejesus out of him on live television and cuts a promo, basically saying that if Wilson Fisk is the mayor of New York City and this is what's happening, then maybe we need a new mayor. And that's going to be the running story, sort of side part story to this tale, is that Luke Cage is going to step up and be the man to replace Wilson Fisk in the polls as the mayor of New York. Kicking issue 2 off with a bang, we have more of the Thunderbolts trying to take down the heroes of New York. This time it's Crossbones going up against Iron Fist. And this is a fun, natural combination. A big, heavy bruiser against a martial arts master. And also, Crossbones, he's got past form with the Thunderbolts as well, so it makes perfect sense to see him wearing the badge. Iron Fist, man, we need a new Iron Fist figure, and we got a new Luke Cage figure coming out pretty soon, and there's rumblings and grumblings and mumblings that maybe they're going to do it as a 2-pack. Hoo-ha! A 2-pack of classic Luke Cage and classic Iron Fist, I'd be down to clown with that. But in the meantime, we also have a very nice, actually I was going to say a very nice Crossbones figure. We got a basic Crossbones figure that I made very nice by doing a little bit of kit bashing, putting a nice little waistcoat on him from Nuke. That looked awesome. You got to tart him up a little bit to make him look good. And also my Iron Fist, it's the Mezco Iron Fist. Oh, he looks so pretty. I was on the fence about getting him for the longest time, and then I saw someone selling him online for a really good price, and I was like, alright then, and I'm so glad I did, because that Iron Fist looks wicked. So they have a bit of a scuffle and a kerfuffle. And also, sidebar, what's happening in the story is we're seeing some interactions between two characters that I wasn't that familiar with. We have the son of the Kingpin, not the Rose, but his other son, and his friend Mike Murdock. Who the heck is Mike Murdock? Well, I'll tell ya. He is the twin brother of Matt Murdock, Daredevil, who was kind of created via magic and misunderstandings, basically, from what I understand. A powerful cosmic being tried to reset the world how they thought or saw that it was, and in doing so, they created Mike Murdock because they thought he was a separate entity. It's a whole thing that I don't want to get into, but nonetheless, Matt Murdock has his doppelganger twin, who's Mike Murdock, who's actually kind of a nice, sweet, fun character. And he's kind of playing the role of Matt Murdock when he needs to so that Daredevil can maintain his secret identity. I'm getting a little bit cross-eyed talking about it, but the takeaway is there's Mike Murdock. He's another version of Matt Murdock. They're twins. It's a fun time. Plus, you got Wilson Fisk's son, who's trying to renounce his dad's criminal career. He's like, no, I'm better than you, I'm better than this, I don't need all of this stuff. And again, you see the Kingpin's personality kind of laid out in a more human sort of way, because he's saying, son, I'm just trying to be a father and do things. And he's like, yeah, but dad, you suck, so let's not. Now we got a scene with another new Marvel legend and possibly the crown jewel of the new Spider-Man retro wave. It is the Daredevil Elektra costume character figure. So this is Elektra in her own version of the Daredevil outfit, and man, it looks cool. It really, really does. They have done a terrific job, I think, of recreating this look of this character. It's a wicked design with the essential elements of the Daredevil costume, with this sort of samurai, kind of ninja sort of look. It's all these different great tastes that taste great together, meshed into one. So we have Elektra confronting Kingpin, and he's like, yo, I've got all these files now. And I have a file on pretty much everyone in the Marvel Universe, and it's all the juicy information that you don't want people to know. And that's why Elektra's like, yeah, well, you better give me my file now, because I'm not cool with that. And Kingpin's like, well, you know what? Whoops, I've already given it to someone else, someone who wants to challenge you. And that's the Elektra spin-off story. Who is that person that's tried to call her out? It's only Kraven the Hunter. Man, I love it when we get different villains for different characters going against different heroes that don't normally fight each other. And Kraven's a great one, because he's always looking for a challenge. So yeah, I've seen him fight the X-Men recently, and he's gone over and fought Kazar and Venom, like different characters that they wouldn't normally cross paths with. And this time we get a very cool throwdown with Elektra and Kraven the Hunter. And ultimately it's much ado about nothing, and he sort of sees better of it and is like, you know what, I'm a peace out. But still, it's a fun mashup and combination. So Kraven the Hunter, we've got a brand new animated version, which is, it's okay. It's kind of a kit bash of previous versions of Kraven. My personal favorite one is, of course, the 2-pack from the Kraven's Last Hunt version, which I still don't think is the quintessential perfect Kraven the Hunter, but he'll do it a push. I think the face looks a bit too maniacal and crazy, but still, for a little Kraven representation, goes to show how many characters are featured in this story. We're not even halfway through. It's a lot. So the heroes are kind of underground and regrouping and deciding what they're going to do about the whole anti-vigilante thing, Wilson Fisk being mayor, and they're discussing Luke Cage running as a mayoral candidate. And one person who is not really cool with this, and may I say, a little bit salty that it's not him, is Tony Stark. And that feels a little bit out of character, but also not too much. It's like, well, Tony is a creature of ego, and I'm sure he would think that, hey, look, if one of us is going to be mayor, then surely it should be me. However, it does feel just a little bit too petty for Tony Stark. And even reading it, I was like, I hope there's a reason behind this, because this isn't the Tony that I know. Yeah, he can be a dick, but not so outwardly kind of, yeah, I said the word before, petty. But don't worry, we find out more about this. And wrapping up the second issue, we basically just get a beatdown of Ben Reilly. Yeah, he has a bad day. He's at the Daily Bugle. First of all, he gets jumped by Taskmaster, and I do love the fact that Taskmaster, even though he's kind of a street-level villain, is always presented as a dangerous threat. Like, he is high level. So he's already taking Ben Reilly to the cleaners, and they're going back and forth. It's actually a really cool fight. But then, of course, the odds well and truly get tipped in the favor of the villains when Whiplash shows up as well, and you realize just how many villains the Kingpin has at his disposal. So Spider-Man gets overwhelmed and captured, gets the old power dampener collar on, so he's out of commission as well. And we also go over to the Kingpin's hideout, and we find out just how he's still able to exert so much influence over people. Yes! There was a whole lot of Purple Man blood spilt in the last issue, but Purple Man ain't dead. He's trapped inside this kind of purple gem type prison, but not all of him. There's a little piece that the Kingpin's kept with him. He's got the pinky tip of the Purple Man inside his cane, which is a great little touch, I think. And he's using this cane to basically exert influence, not as strong as the Purple Man can do, but it basically makes people kind of more easily coerced to whatever he wants, and that's doubly dangerous. So it's a fun little gimmick, and I would love to have that as an accessory for the Kingpin. The cane with a little Purple Man pinky tip in there. I think that's kind of cool.
You know, a YouTube viewer with money is a little like the mule with a spinning wheel. No one knows how he got it, and danged if he knows how to use it.
Mule.
The name's Behavior, Model Behavior, and I come before you good people tonight with a Patreon. Possibly the greatest... it's not really for you. It's more of a Shartimus Prime idea. Now, wait a minute. We're twice as smart as the viewers of Shartimus Prime. Just tell us about your Patreon, and we'll subscribe to it. Alright, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll show you my Patreon. I give you the Model Behavior Patreon. I've sold Patreon subscriptions to Brockway, Ogdenville, North Haverbrook, and by gum, that put them on the map. I swear it's YouTube's only choice. Throw up your hands and raise your voice.
Model Behavior! Model Behavior! Model Behavior!
Model Behavior! Model down! The Model Behaviour Patreon. Seriously, if you don't subscribe, I'm going to keep singing. I'm not kidding.
So in issue 3, we have Spider-Man in custody, but that does not last for long, because one thing that I always have enjoyed is the long-standing friendship between Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, and Spider-Man, even though in this case, it's Ben Reilly. But nonetheless, Human Torch and the Thing break into the police station and rescue the Wallcrawler, so he can go back to being a dumbass being manipulated by an evil global megacorporation. Hey, it was the style at the time. But also, we get another bit of a feature on the Purple Children. And this was a whole bunch of folks that I didn't know about. The Purple Man, he's quite a virile son of a gun. He has a whole bunch of children, and they are not inherently evil. And right now, they're just kind of orphans out on the street, and they have Purple Man powers, so they can exert all the influence and control as well. Not as much as their big evil dad can, but essentially they're these kind of wild cards. They're out and about, and they're gonna feature quite prominently later in the book, but at the moment we're just getting familiar. I myself as a new reader for these characters was as well, that like, oh, these are characters that exist, they're going to be used later. And of course, what would a Marvel mega event be without some huge big group punch up Royal Rumbles? And we get one. We have all the heroes who have combined and they're together on a rooftop being a bit broody, trying to work out what their next move is, including She-Hulk, who's in her classic purple and white costume that we're still waiting for. One of these days we're going to get a Marvel Legend of the classic She-Hulk. We got the grey one, we got the green one in the ripped clothes. We're slowly getting our way closer to a She-Hulk that we actually all want. Don't worry, one of these days it's going to happen. But all the Marvel heroes are attacked by Doc Ock and his superior four. So he's got the Ghost Rider, Hulk, and Wolverine versions of himself. It's crazy, bonky, silly, wacky, but I kind of like it. I dig it. And the artwork, it's gorgeous. And all the heroes and these different Ock variants throwing down. It's a good time. And at one point, bam! Iron Man takes a serious hard heavy hit and he is down. Captain America rushes over to his aid and oh, lo and behold, it wasn't Tony Stark. Nah, it was the Chameleon all along. And that's something, again, kind of like I said about Kraven fighting Elektra. I love it when a villain from one hero's stories infiltrates other ones. I know that it happens, more often than I would probably appreciate. But still, seeing Chameleon interacting with Iron Man, the Avengers, Captain America, it's cool. It's a nice mix-up and mash-up, and it also shows why Tony Stark was acting out of character beforehand. He was trying to infiltrate and gain that power and that influence, and being mayor would have been a perfect way of doing it. Unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be, and when Fist started flying, the Chameleon, he hasn't got the skills to pay the bills, and he was quickly rumbled. And issue 3 ends, unfortunately, for Daredevil, Matt Murdock, his good, close, personal, longtime friend, Foggy. Boy, Foggy is quite the punching bag for villains that want to get at the heroes, and this time is no exception. The Kingpin sends his goons around. Hired goons, don't worry, it's not the Pinkertons, it's not that bad. But he does send his hired goons around to go and beat the holy living bejesus out of Foggy Nelson, because hey, it's Foggy. It's what you do, poor guy. At the halfway point of the story now, we flash forward 2 weeks, and kind of Wilson Fisk he's loving his life a little bit. The heroes are all outlawed. He's got his Thunderbolts policing the street. Doc Ock is kind of his right-hand man, but even he knows that Doc Ock knows that this thing ain't gonna last for long, because Dr. Octopus is nobody's right-hand man, even though he technically has 8 of them. So it's only going to be a matter of time before these guys turn on each other. But I do love the back and forth, the dialogue, the repartee, the verbal and mental battle of wits that these guys have with each other, where it's like, I know you're going to betray me and you know that you're going to betray me, but at the moment we're working quite well together, so let's keep this going until one of us can betray the other one first, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be me, and by me I don't mean you, I mean me. I like that dynamic. Someone who's not enjoying their dynamic right now is Foggy Nelson, who's still in the hospital recovering from the beating that he took at the hands of the Kingpin's thugs. And this is where we get the interaction between Matt Murdock and his magical twin brother, Mike Murdock. This is where I'm trying to not get too confused. And it's a perfect example of how Mike Murdock helps Matt Murdock be Daredevil, because now he can go out and be the devil, and people can still see Mike Murdock being Matt Murdock, and so no one's like, oh well, how come no one sees these two together? They do see them together. So it actually works out very conveniently for Matt Murdock. He can be Daredevil, and Mike Murdock can be Matt Murdock, and there's no way that this is going to blow up in their faces. Probably. Back in the Kingpin's lair with the Thunderbolts, and they're having a bit of a back and forth, Kingpin and US Agent, about how they're going about policing these laws. And US Agent, it actually turns out that he isn't just walking the line and fighting the good fight because that's what the law is. He is kind of working with the heroes, feeding them information, being an inside man, so to speak. So he's controlling the Thunderbolts, trying to limit the damage that they do while also helping out the heroes, because dang it, he's a good dude. Unfortunately, however, Wilson Fisk is getting real handy with this purple man cane of his, and he's using it to just mind control anyone who steps out of line, including US Agent. And you know that he's doing that because all of a sudden, his speech bubbles become purple, and it's like, dude, you're using your purple man powers. However, not everyone falls into line, and when the Kingpin says that he wants the Thunderbolts to go out and capture the children of the Purple Man, it's the Rhino, interestingly, who's like, I ain't doing this. I'm happy to beat the holy living bejesus out of the costumed heroes, but you want to start sending me after little children? Nah, I'm out. So it's kind of nice that Rhino has some more character development. He's a big mean bruiser, but he's not going to go after kids. Luckily, there's no shortage of supervillains who are happy to do that. And in this case, we get the Abomination taking the place of Rhino. You know what? That's what I would call an addition by subtraction, because the Abomination, yeah, he has no qualms. And I think we can arguably say on the power scale, he's a little bit bigger and badder than the Rhino is. So yeah, the Abomination joins the Thunderbolts, and we've got a couple of Abomination figures as well. Still, for me personally, the Select Abomination is still my favorite. Not much in the way of articulation, but just a big, massive, giant, chunky, heavy brick of a figure. Building Thunderbolts displays and Thunderbolts teams is always so much fun because you have so much variety of the different characters you can incorporate. And this one with Agony and Lady Elektra, even though we don't have her yet, and now Abomination and US Agent, it's such a cool, fun mix and group. Man, I feel like I need to go and buy more action figures now. Also, we get just a little face-to-face time with Wilson Fisk and his main squeeze, who at this time is Typhoid Mary. And this is a character that I think we need some more representation of in action figure form. We've got kind of a modern-ish looking Typhoid Mary who came out in the Monster Venom wave, I think it was, several years ago. And she's fine as an action figure, but come on, it's the classic Typhoid Mary look we want. We want the pink jumper with the half-face mask and the big hair. The Frank Miller Typhoid Mary. That's the one that would be really, really cool. And she does get involved quite a lot in the story in some of the side issues as well. There's an X-Men Devil's Reign story where Wilson Fisk is trying to frame Emma Frost, and at the end of that there's a really cool confrontation between them where Emma Frost just appears in their bedroom and she mind controls Typhoid Mary to threaten to kill Fisk, and she basically says, FYI, I'm gonna do this at some point, just so you know, but I'm not gonna do it now, but I will do it one day and you'll never see it coming, so have fun with that. And that's actually something that makes me go, Emma Frost, kind of badass. I dig that. I dig that. So yeah, we get a little bit of more of a feature of Typhoid Mary as well. And that's kind of cool. Then we flash over to the Supermax prison where some of the heroes are being held, including Reed Richards and Sue Storm. And of course, they ain't going to be held for long, whether they got power dampening collars on or not. The Fantastic Four are able to launch, well, the Fantastic Two are able to launch a Breakout. And also what's kind of cool is that the guards are wearing guardsman uniform, but it's just been recolored gold and black in a Thunderbolts kind of motif. But we have guardsman figures. They ain't great, but we got them. They're very, very 90s in the color scheme with the different green tones, which I love, but they're also pretty cheap figures. They're just repaints with a different head, essentially. They kind of just like threw those ones out there very quickly. They thought, people want guardsmen? No, they can be army builders too. If you're going to make army building figures, then give us some different accessories so that we can change the looks of them, different guns and stuff. And no, not going to do that. Just gonna put it out as quickly and cheaply as possible with bad paintwork on my one. Oh yeah, I had some defects on mine. Yeah, a little bit salty on that. But hey, I've been really positive about action figures in this review so far, so let's not dwell on that. let's carry on with the story, because as Reed and Sue are breaking out, they get a little bit of help from another vigilante in there, Moon Knight. And Moon Knight has a fun side story as well, which I won't go into too much detail, but he kind of becomes part of a prison fight club kind of thing. And as you can imagine, it doesn't work out well for his opponents. Moon Knight kind of eats their lunch, and it's a good time. I'm not a fan of Moon Knight, but he's growing on me. I'm becoming a fan of Moon Knight. When he's written well, I really dig the character. So yeah, the three of them, they launch an escape, and you know what? It's a successful one. They're out, we can continue the story. But before I do though, Moon Knight, he's got a badass Marvel Legend figure. He's got a bunch of badass Marvel Legend figures. The one that came out several years ago, the classic 616, I love it. So many accessories, different heads, all the different ways you can pose him and display him. So good. Then we got the Disney Plus Moon Knight, and whatever you think of the Disney Plus Moon Knight show, it's okay, not great, but the actual figures that came from it, the Khonshu Builder figure, that is stunning. It really, really is. But then the actual TV Moon Knight, yeah, he looks great. I love the way that they made the costume look like bandages. You got a Mr. Knight figure as well. So I did this because I just think of the pose of him putting the glove on. Otherwise that looks a bit weird. I got to explain why I'm doing this. Yeah, those figures look really, really cool. For me, my quintessential Moon Knight is my Mezco Moon Knight, which I adore. That was a gift to the show from a good brother, Kozen. Thank you so much, man. That was awesome, and I love that Mezco Moon Knight. He really is chef's kiss. And then we got a Revoltech one coming out pretty soon as well. It's a good time to be a Moon Knight fan. In the next scene, we have a nice little example as to how power can't get you everything you want, where the Kingpin confronts his son Butch. So again, not the Rose, but Butch. Rose we're going to touch on in a minute. But Butch basically says, like, I don't care if you're the mayor, I don't care if you want to be my dad. You're not. You're a scumbag, you're a criminal. I'm trying to separate myself from you in this life. And Kingpin, with his purple man cane, he's like, I can make you fall in line if you don't have a choice in this. And Butch stands up to him and he's like, you gonna do it then? And Kingpin backs down because he realizes there's no point in having the love of his son if it's forced like that. And it's a great little moment, a great little character moment of, oh man, you've got everything you want, but you haven't. And there's some things that you can't manipulate and force. And I'm like, damn, comic book. It's a nice little bit of writing there. So speaking of the Rose, we do have a little side story. We've got Spider-Man Devil's Reign, where he battles the Rose. It's not much of much. The Rose, he's recently been resurrected. This was a whole story in Spider-Man where it was all mystical and death and demons, and I ain't gonna go into that. But the bottom line gist is that the Rose was resurrected. That was something the Kingpin just bent over backwards to make happen, and then they haven't really done a huge amount with him since. But Hasbro have done something. They've given us a Rose action figure. Hasn't hit store shelves yet, but when he does, some people are going to be like, yeah, it's the Rose. For me, I never really read that many Rose stories, even though I'm a massive Spider-Man fan. Like, he's never been a prominent A-list character. And this figure doesn't look like a A-list kind of figure. He looks decent. He looks okay. Comes with a nice little rose that he can hold. That's something, I guess. But it looks like his suit is very ill-fitting. You know, he definitely bought this off the rack. This wasn't a custom-made job here. This is your brother's hand-me-downs, and it's like, oh, this doesn't really fit very well. Well, it's what you're getting. So in this Spider-Man story, the Rose is selling stolen weapons and whatnot. Spidey takes him down, then continues to be a dumbass being manipulated by a global mega corporation that definitely didn't injure the original Spider-Man so that they could control a new one themselves. Or is it? It's a terrible story. Poor old Ben Reilly. It's only gonna get worse. So, speaking of getting worse, after being sort of kicked to the curb by his son, the Kingpin, he's not in a good mood. So we go over and we find the champions, who are like the young Avengers, essentially. And I've always liked this team. You've got Miles Morales, Spider-Man. You got Viv, like the daughter of the Vision. There's Kid Nova. And there's a couple of others as well, who I forget, but they're there. And they get attacked by Dr. Octopus's Octobots, the little drones that he uses to police the city. But amazingly, coming to their rescue, it's the Dino! And of course they think, no, whoa, hey, you're a Thunderbolt. And he's like, nah, Thunderbolts, they're a little bit too extreme for me. The whole kind of kidnapping kids, that's kind of where I'm out. So it was a nice little character moment, again, that fleshes out the depths of the Rhino. And speaking of good character moments, we got a nice one coming up here next with the Kingpin having a tender moment with Typhoid Mary, which is a weird sentence to say. And he's lamenting about how he's lost his family and he's blue, he's glum, and there's nothing sadder than a sad Kingpin. And he talks to Typhoid Mary about his memories with her and, you know, the good times and all that kind of thing. And she says to him, I wish I could remember all of those good times, but because of all the intense treatments and mental therapy and things that I've had, I can't remember those first times that we were together. To which Kingpin says, I wish you could remember. At which point, the cane that he's holding with the Purple Man's finger in it activates and allows her to remember those first times. And he's like, well, I didn't mean to do that. She's like, no, but that's amazing. I can remember this because you told me to remember, and the Purple Man did. I remember. And that makes the Kingpin think of something. And in classic dramatic fashion, he rushes out of the room, runs up to the roof of his building with the pouring rain and the lightning flashing. He holds the cane and he says, remember. And of course, he drops to his knees with a look of physical rage on his face. And he says, Matt Murdock. And it's like, oh, I thought that was a great way of going about doing this. I forget why he forgot who Matt's identity was in the first place. But having the manipulation power of the Purple Man, simply commanding himself to remember, that's really clever. I dig it. And now Matt Murdock is in a lot of trouble. So issue 5 is a whole lot of brouhaha. There's fists flying, and honestly, it's a good time. Sometimes you just have big rumbles, and you think, this is just mindless action for the sake of it. In this case, it's been well built up. So the not the X-Men, they're kind of on the sidelines for this one, but the Avengers and the heroes of New York, they're still trying to do their thing, and more to the point now, they're trying to rescue the children of the Purple Man who have been captured and kidnapped by the Thunderbolts. US Agent is attempting to help them as well because he's kind of done a face turn, even though he was never a heel, he was just working his own agenda to try and do the greater good. So now all the heroes and all the villains are fighting in the streets of New York, and unfortunately Wilson Fisk has kind of activated his doomsday plan essentially, which is releasing the Purple Man and saying, go and just command everyone around you to kill all the heroes who have ever messed with me, because now I'm kind of sort of at a 10. Alright, I've had it with everyone. So in classic supervillain fashion, kill them all. And speaking of killing them all, Kingpin has a bone to pick with a certain red-haired lawyer. And unfortunately, that's bad news for anyone who might not be Matt Murdock, but look just like him. So the final issue opens up with the massive, big, huge, mega Smash Brothers brawl of the heroes of New York in like Times Square, essentially, battling all the Thunderbolts, the Purple Man, all of his minions, and Doc Ock and his superior four. It is a massive knockdown, drag-out affair, and it is a great time to watch. Really, really fun artwork. I love a massive, good, big splash page brawl, and that's what we're getting here. So really cool, and it's kind of a catharsis. It's an earned action scene. It's been built up, and I'm digging it. Kingpin, he's kind of done what he needed to do. We didn't get to see it, but he's done a bad thing. And he's ready to actually hang up his mayoral coat and be like, you know what? I think it's time to take a step back because I'm sort of exhausted. So he gets in a car with Typhoid Mary. They're going to go and make a bit of an exit. But you don't get away from a life of villainy that easily. Not when Elektra is wearing a badass Daredevil costume. And she comes swinging in, smashing through the car as it drives out of New York, throws the Kingpin out, beats the bejesus out of him and says, pal, you ain't going nowhere. So Elektra is taking on the Kingpin and Typhoid Mary as well, which does leave her a little bit outnumbered until Matt Murdock joins the fight. Blood furious rage in his red eyes because the Kingpin, in the classic heartbreaking irony twist, call it what you will, but call it the death of Mike Murdock, Kingpin confronts Daredevil's twin brother Mike, who is playing Matt, and murders him, which is a very sad but also clever way of resolving the issue of what does Kingpin do now that he knows who Daredevil is. Well, he murders him. And that's kind of sad, but also brilliantly done as well. So now we have our final confrontation between the two devils, Wilson Fisk and Typhoid Mary, and they go at it tooth and claw. It's a really good, grim, grimy, knockdown, drag-out kind of fight. At one point, Daredevil takes the Kingpin's cane with the Purple Man's finger in, and he uses its ability to say, I want you to know and remember and think about all the pain and suffering that you've caused everyone. And in that moment, Wilson Fisk is like, oh, well, that sucks. And then just to put the icing on the cake, Daredevil then smashes the cane over his head. Really brutal. Very, very cool. Elektra takes out Typhoid Mary, and Daredevil is standing over Kingpin. He's about to finally murder him for good. He rears back, and it's Elektra who steps in, and she's like, yo, if you do this, there's no going back, and I don't think you're that kind of guy. And it's a classic cliche that we have seen so many times in comic books, but you know what? It's an oldie but a goodie, and Daredevil, he's like, damn it, you are kind of sort of right. Although granted, to be fair, let me ask you, Elektra, how many ninjas have you murdered this week? She's like, that's not important. We don't want to kill the Kingpin. Why? Because he's a franchise player. We love reading about the Kingpin, so don't kill him off. So that's where we end with Daredevil, Elektra standing triumphantly over the Kingpin, who's going to be taken into custody for all of his manipulations with the Purple Man and everything else that he's done. They got him banged to rights. But we're not done yet. In New York, it's not looking good for the heroes because the Thunderbolts, they're raining hell. You got the Purple Man controlling everyone. So what can they do to counteract Purple Man? The heroes are safe because they've got these little devices that, you know, make it impossible for him to control them. However, the rest of New York is not so lucky. But the heroes still have one ace up their sleeve. The remaining child of the Purple Man. With his dad's powers as well, he uses those amplified by an interesting little aside, Luke Cage, who has been the moral compass and center of this story the whole time. He basically gives this kid the belief in himself and the fortitude to stand up to his dad. And they basically create kind of a feedback loop where BAM! Takes out the Purple Man. So he is knocked out unconscious, and Luke Cage is kind of the reason that this kid believed in himself enough to do it. He gave him the strength. It's a nice touch to the character of Luke Cage that he is this kind of upstanding bastion of like what's good and right. He's kind of a Captain America sort of character in that regard, and I dig that that's what Luke Cage has become. So Purple Man is out, and now it's time for the heroes to just mop up the rest of the villains. There's one nice little panel where it's Iron Man taking on Doc Ock. Again, two different characters kind of going head to head that don't normally. And ultimately, Iron Man takes him out pretty easily with a big old punch to the face, and he has the nice aside of saying, Doc Ock, all that superior intellect, and you never thought to make yourself some armor? That is a good point, Doc Ock. Your arms are awesome, but that's a very squishy body. You might want to think about protecting that a little bit more. So yeah, the fight in New York comes to a close, and it's a satisfying conclusion. All the bad guys get rounded up, and in the end, Luke Cage is surveying everything that's happened, and Jessica Jones comes up, and she's like, well, this whole mayor thing. And he's like, yeah, Wilson Fisk, you know, he's not mayor anymore, so we don't need to worry about that. I guess I'm going to run unopposed. And that's a really nice little twist. I thought that it was just going to be Luke Cage, you know, trying to become mayor just to oppose Wilson Fisk. But actually, now that Wilson Fisk is out of the picture, he can still, he's like, I could actually do good as mayor of New York. So that's a really interesting angle that they're going to take there. But we're not done yet. We got ourselves a couple of little epilogues. First of all, Wilson Fisk in custody, being taken to prison, when lo and behold, the agent who's in there with him removes his mask, and it's his son, Butch. Damn! The rich never have to pay for their crimes, do they? Butch is working for the Stormwinds, who we saw way back at the start of this, the ultra-rich master manipulators. He takes Kingpin to their penthouse, and they're like, hey, Wilson, how's it going? Pour yourself a drink, sit down, let us tell you about our little plan. Yes! You were outed as doing all these terrible things. You're not mayor of New York. But you know what? We're rich. We don't have to pay for our crimes. In fact, we got a little plan for you. Wilson, you're going to be president. And Wilson Fisk is like, interesting. And of course, it's great because you can see the cogs turning in his head. And you just know, like, yeah, Wilson Fisk ain't nobody's puppet. And you can see how smarmy and just, like, Wilson Fisk is a bad guy, but at least he's a bad guy who's cerebral and gets his hands dirty and gets in amongst it. Whereas these guys are just rich a-holes, and they think that they've got this tiger on a chain. They think that the Kingpin is gonna be their puppet president, and he's like, well, this sounds like a good idea, let me shake your hand. And then murder you horribly. And that's what he does. He takes out the Stormwinds. He murders their security. It's a bloodbath in classic Kingpin fashion. He's like, I'm nobody's puppet. And he turns to his son Butch and he's like, let that be a lesson to you as well. And he tells him, I'm gonna go retire. You know what? I'm done. This last week, it's been a lot. But it's up to you, son, to continue my legacy. And that's where he leaves Butch, being incredibly conflicted and not knowing what to do with his life. Is he going to be the new Kingpin of crime? Is he going to try and go straight? We're going to have to find out. But as for the Kingpin, he actually gets a very happy ending. The last we see of him, he's on a yacht with Typhoid Mary sailing off into the sunset. Happy days ahead for them. And finally, the last epilogue is the two daredevils of New York, Elektra and Matt Murdock, up on a rooftop. And Matt says, hey, now that people think that Matt Murdock is dead, that kind of frees up Daredevil to do whatever he wants to do. There's no need for a double life because they don't think that there's a life anymore, because people didn't know about the whole twin brother thing. Mike Murdock was just a switcheroo person that was convenient, and now that he's been apparently murdered, Daredevil's got a lot of time on his hands. So Elektra's like, well, what do you want to do? And they think, let's take out the hand once and for all. Oh, what a big sort of like, boom, this is what we're going to go do moment. However, it just so happens that the hand has a new person in charge. You know what his name is? Frank Castle. But that's a story for another day. So gang, that does it for Dark Reign. What did you think about this comic book story? What did you think about As Told by Toys? Comment below. Let me know. Genuinely, I would love to know what you think about these episodes because they take a lot of work. It's exhausting doing these. And then with the edits on top, it's very time consuming, but I honestly get such a kick out of doing it. If you guys get a kick out of watching them, then let me know. And I think I probably will start to do more and more of these because I think it's a great hook for the channel. I really, really enjoy putting these things together. It just takes a long time. But gang, if you want to help support the channel and help me get these videos out quicker, then you can do by going over to patreon.com/displaying-model-behaviour. Throw a couple of bucks at me over there and you can enjoy all of the exclusive content, all the extra videos on there. I'm doing like an X-Men, the cartoon retrospective on there where it's kind of like As Told by Toys, but with the X-Men cartoon. That's a whole lot of fun. Plus, you get like exclusive live streams and download links and all kinds of fun stuff. It's a good time. Or you can go over to the member section on YouTube. Toss a couple of bucks my way that way. There's all sorts of ways you can give me money. It's amazing. You could even go and buy yourself a Displaying Model Behaviour t-shirt. Can't even say the name of my own show. They're available at teespring.com. Check the link in the description below. Whew, that was a whole lot of shilling. Gang, if you enjoyed this, what would you like to see me cover next on As Told by Toys? Because there's a whole lot of comic book stories out there and a whole lot of action figures that have been made about them. But for now, we're all done. So thank you so much for watching, and until next time, keep displaying model behavior.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And also, go over to the Patreon and throw some money at Dave. He would like that. Or stay here on YouTube and get yourself a YouTube channel membership. Those are good too. And also go over to Instagram and join that and the Facebook group. Oh, he's got loads of stuff. They're all in the check the link in the description below. And then get a t-shirt. Not enough people are buying t-shirts. And also, if you want to see Dave's other channels, then there is Displaying Miscellaneous Behavior and Model Behavior Wrestling. All the links are down there in the description. Just go look at them. Alright, see ya. It's no door that way. Just bye.